everyone, this is Steve Weintraub with Collider. I'm here at our media studio in Austin at the Cinema Center. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone for tuning in for all our South by Southwest interviews, and I am thrilled to be able to talk to you guys about Are We Good, your fantastic documentary. How are you both doing?
I'm okay so far. Are you all right?
I'm doing okay, actually.
Okay.
I'm really happy you're here.
I feel almost there. Happy.
I have a million questions, but I like throwing like a curveball or two at the beginning. I hope you don't mind. I have two things aimed at you.
Now I know they're coming.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
No
It's true.
surprises.
It's
No
true,
surprises.
though. When you were growing up, did you ever think you would voice Lex Luthor in a animated movie?
No, because I'm not even sure I knew who he was up until I got that part. I have a sense that Lex Luthor was important in the DC universe. But yeah, I had no idea, nor would I have thought it would happen ever.
Did you enjoy that experience?
I think so. I don't know, like when you do voiceover for animated things, you don't always know really what's happening. You're just in a booth and you're doing a thing, and then someone will come up to you a year later and go like, hey, I saw you as in, what was it, DC Super Pets?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, I haven't seen that. How was it?
Okay. My other thing, if you don't mind, I love the movie Almost Famous. Just love.
Yeah.
And you were an angry promoter.
That's right.
So what do you remember? I have plenty of questions for you, I promise.
No, I don't. Keep
But
coming.
I'm just curious what you remember about that experience, because that was early in your acting career, and you got to.
There was a big gap, I think about a 20-year gap between parts. What I remember was two things: that Cameron Crowe was very nice, and he, literally, I had that small part, and he had dinner with my wife at the time and myself. He just, spent he was into hanging out, with a guy who had two lines. The other thing was I didn't really know the difference between the sort of B unit crew. Like when I was driving up that ramp, chasing the bus, everyone else had gone. There was nobody there but me and a second camera crew running up and down that ramp for like 10, 12 takes.
Thank you for sharing. Now jumping into why I get to talk to you guys. You guys have worked together before. You're obviously friends. Talk a little bit about what, as you're looking at each other.
Feinartz is like,
Well, I
true.
am
We're
curious,
friends. We are
like, when did you realize that you wanted to make this film, and when did you realize you were okay with making this film?
Yeah. We talked about making the film in like April of 2021. That's kind of when it started. And then, I've always been a fan of Marc's, and I'd known him for about 12, 13 years. I thought he'd be a very difficult film subject, a documentary subject. So I went into it with a little bit of nerves. But no, I was once we started shooting, I was very comfortable, and I knew we had something unique for sure. Yeah.
he had done a doc on my buddy Eddie, and I think I was in that, right?
Yeah.
And I liked his work, and he'd always been around comedy, and he expressed interest, and I said, why? And then he expressed interest again. I said, no. And then maybe the sixth or seventh time, I'm like, okay, let's go ahead, do it.
Well, what was it like? I'm curious, when you agreed to do the doc and when you decided to make it and the stars align, how much were you filming? Like, for people that don't know, what is it actually like when you're following him around and filming? Is it one of these things where you're around all the time, or do you designate certain days or certain things?
So much. He was around like always, it felt like.
Yeah,
and then like I'd be like, no, how much more do we have to do? And he's like, just a little more, just a little bit. And then that would go on for a year.
Kept annoying you at the Comedy Store for a while.
Yeah, it was. But once we got it going, it was fine. But I felt like it was never ending.
Well, what is it like, though, in terms of like being, I've never been on camera like that. What is it like when someone's in your home, following you around, doing what you're doing, watching you do stuff,
Well, it's a little heightened. You can't claim to just not know it's there. So because I'm a performer, there is an element of being conscious of the camera. But I don't think, but depending on the tone of what we were doing, like if he just has, if I'm just at the Comedy Store hanging out, then I can focus on other things. But if it's just me, baking a pie, I'm going to, add a little, add a little juice to it.
Yeah. Well, that's why you overshoot in these documentaries too.
You got to wait till the performer stops performing.
Yeah, you got to wear them down a little bit. Yeah.
No, but I would imagine that's true. Like when you start filming at the beginning of the day, you know the camera's there, but after 5 hours, maybe you shut off to it.
Well, yeah, but it's a matter of engagement. If I'm talking to him, I'm gonna shift gears. If I'm talking with my dad or with other people, and it's like I am able to focus on what's happening as opposed to the camera being on. But there's an impulse to address the camera.
Yeah, and most of the film was just me and a camera with Mark.
Yeah.
So we didn't do it. We didn't have a big crew, only on certain days, but mostly it was just a one-off thing.
So like I said, I think the film's fantastic, but I do have one note and one objection to the edit. I really loved him with his cats. I am a big cat person, and there really wasn't enough footage of that. Like that's a real problem for me. So can you please address that as the director? That why the cats aren't.
I think
in
we
it
got
more.
them all in there, though.
I think they were definitely in there. I think it's yeah, you're being facetious, but yeah, there's a lot.
No, I'm not being facetious.
That's a different documentary.
There was a lot of cats in this one.
That's a documentary called Mark's Cats.
Right, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. That's a whole other movie. We'll get to work on that one.
Right. No, but I'm being serious. I am curious.
Really?
When did you? I love animals. I love cats. I love dogs. But when did you talk about your love of cats and the fact that you put up with them when you don't put up with a lot of other things?
Well, I mean, I grew up with a lot of dogs when I was a kid, a lot of old English sheepdogs. And my mom, there was a few cats around. There's always a lot of animals around. And I just don't live the life that would be good for a dog. And then at some point, I guess Mishna, my second wife, bought me a kitten, Butch, and she made it to LA the first time I moved out there. But then she had a congenital heart problem and died fairly young. But we had gotten another cat, Boomer, for Butch. And Boomer, I remember I went to a shelter and we were looking at these cats, and it was one of these sort of I don't know what kind of shelter it was, but it looked like a lot of old cats that people just had enough of. Just sort of kind of just very tired cats. And there was one that was out of his mind. I'm like, let's get that one. But then having had experience with feral cats later, I realized that was a feral cat, Boomer was. And then I don't know, it evolved because I was in Queens and I ended up trapping these 3 feral cats. And in the back of my yard, and I didn't realize they were feral, and they just destroyed everything in my house. And it took years to make them calm, but they were the original cats. That was Monkey and LaFonda. And then we had Boomer from when Butch was alive. And then, I had those cats. I had Monkey and LaFonda for 16 years. And then Buster showed up at my door. I don't know why. when he was very young, I think someone had gotten.
Is this in Queens or in LA?
No, that was LA. He just showed up. He was eating the food I put out for the ferals that were out by my house. There were a few cats outside, and he showed up. He was too young to really be out in the wild. I don't know. He must have gotten away. And so we took him in. I took him in and cleaned him up. So he's there now. Monkey and LaFonda passed, and then
Sammy's the name.
Yeah, Sammy came from a litter, a friend of my girlfriend's, and then again Charlie. He was under my backyard. He showed up at my house too. A feral mom had a litter, and she was moving them all over the place. But she left him, probably coming back for him. But I took him, and he was very young. So I just I've always liked cats. I have an adversarial relationship with a lot of them, but they. Like I talk about it on stage a bit. I always used to wonder how come all my cats are nervous? And I realized I don't talk to them like regular cat owners. I'm like, what's going on, guys? So the cats are like, what? What's happening? Why is he yelling? So it was me. It took me a long time to realize it was me. I've calmed down with them.
I have to say, I really love what you do. I also have done similar things but I'm just saying respect.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm always fascinated by editing, and especially on a documentary when you have so much footage. So talk a little bit about when you started filming, did you have an idea of where it was going, or it was more like, let's film and then we're going to find it in the edit?
No, we knew where we were going. We didn't know where the third act was going to be honest with you, but we knew where we were going with most of the film, and it was the trajectory of building the material after Lynn Shelton had passed away and Mark figuring out how to talk about it on stage. That was the core of the film. When we brought on our editors, our lead editor, Derek Boonstra, fantastic editor, we sat down and figured out some new, directions for the film and not the typical sort of A to B, sort of thing. And, Mark's father became a part of the story as well. So there were certain new elements that came in later on as we were filming. Yeah.
What were there any storylines or big changes that happened in the edit that you weren't like not expecting, or you showed the film and you were like, oh, maybe we need to do this?
No major storyline changes. I think your father would be the biggest one, being a part at the end. Yeah. Or in the last 30 minutes, his father becomes a bigger part of the story.
So I am curious. So what is it like when are you watching cuts along the way, or are you only seeing it when he has a cut that like, this is the version? And then when you watch it, how much are you sort of like, this is pretty personal, I don't want this in there? Like, how much are you sort of like, it's all okay?
No, it was all okay. I trusted him with his vision. It's his movie. He showed me one cut early on that, I thought, I had notes and he got notes from other people, and I had input in terms of just tightening it up a little bit. But, and then I only saw one other cut, a more complete cut. And, no, I didn't have anything personal. The problems I had with it that were cringy with me, they weren't problems with the film. They were just problems with me. So and it's kind of hard to see that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that, Mark had no, I mean, you were so minimal in terms of your notes. That was just like, you had like one thing really. You had like one note essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the
people that you interviewed?
Yeah. You were like,
well, you interviewed a bunch of my peers, and like, it was just that, the film itself is a little hard on me in a way, only because I'm me and I didn't see myself the way that I saw the guy in the film. But he interviewed all these peers of mine, like, Bargatze and Cross and my friend Sam, and all the clips were them busting on me, just like, oh God, Maron, well, what are you? And I'm like, didn't they say anything nice? Can you put one nice thing? It's hard. The film's hard enough on me just as it is. Have these guys talking me up a little bit. And I thought that was a reasonable note.
Yeah.
So I am curious, when you watch a film like this, which you see yourself in a different light when you have this much footage, is there anything that you saw that you're like, wow, this is something I've never really thought about as myself that I actually maybe want to work on because of the film?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that seeing yourself from the outside point of view, or from Steven's point of view, as opposed to me seeing myself, and I think I'm pretty self-aware, but you don't really get to see who you are in the world from that point of view. Yeah, I mean, there were things where I was like, I could probably, tighten my belt. My pants were falling down a lot. And also it was kind of humbling in that, like, I did get to see how other people react to me from an external point of view. And that was, I don't know if there's anything I need to work on, other than, maybe not being so worked up all the time.
I've been given the wrap-up signal, which destroys me because I have about 20 other questions. But I have to ask one last thing, Mark, if you don't mind. I'm a huge fan of Scott Cooper, and you're in the upcoming Bruce Springsteen film. What can you say about your role in getting to watch Jeremy and work with Scott? Because it's a really big deal, a really big film.
Well, it's weird because it's really a very small part, but the guy is pivotal in the story of the making of Nebraska, this engineer named Chuck Plotkin. And like when I'd agreed to do it a while back, and then I'd done another movie, and then I revisited the script, and I texted Scott. I'm like, there's not much for me to do here, man. I mean, and he's like, well, you don't have to do it. I just thought it would be fun. I'm like, all right, I'm sorry. So but I love Scott and I love his movies. I think he's he's got a very specific vision, and it's compelling. He's great. So I went out there. The best part of it really was there was no reason for me to research this guy. He was the engineer. I just needed to look like I knew how to run a board. And there were lines and stuff. And I had scenes with Jeremy Strong, and I had one scene with Jeremy Allen White, but it was all took place in the studio. And it was the studio that they did some of the recording of, trying to get Nebraska right. So it's the real studio. But the real perk of doing that movie was, Strong is playing John Landau, and White is playing Bruce, but Bruce and John, the real ones, were just out of Video Village. They were hanging out the whole time. So, Scott would be a cut, and they just go hang out with Bruce for a little while. So that was pretty great because I had interviewed him. So he knew me enough to hang.
Sure.
So anytime you had a minute to go get off the set, you just go ask Bruce some questions. And it was kind of fun to see Jeremy work, both Jeremys, and Walter Hauser was there too. He's kind of a funny guy.
Like this cast and this lineup, I know I have to go. I know they're going to kill me. But what do you think that audiences will see when they see Jeremy as Bruce and Jeremy, because they're both such talented actors?
Well, I think that the story, if you're a creative person, who has come up against yourself in terms of what your vision is, that the story of making Nebraska is a very compelling story. And they're both all in. I mean, Jeremy Allen White is doing his own singing, and there were times where Bruce didn't know whether what he was listening to was him or Jeremy. So, it's a good story, man.
Yeah, I can't wait. Listen, I really mean this. I really had a lot more questions for you guys, but when it's coming out, hopefully I can do a follow-up. I want to say congrats so much on the doc. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yes, sir.
And thank you, and have a fantastic premiere.
Thank you.
At South by.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks a lot.
Good talking to you.